He offered his jacket to a shivering woman at the bus stop, not knowing she was a CEO who would change his life forever. The wind cut through New York like a blade, snow falling steady from the gray sky, blanketing the sidewalks and quieting the city's usual roar. At a nearly deserted bus stop under a flickering street lamp, Henry stood hunched in a fraying olive jacket, clutching a worn manila folder tight to his chest. Inside were 5 resumes, 5 silent rejections. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath fog in the cold night air. 46 years old, former construction engineer, widower, father, and for now, homeless. The thought landed heavily on him, like the snow piling at his feet. The red glow of a nearby pharmacy sign blinked. 8:41 p.m. The bus was late. Cold had soaked through his worn boots. Then through the snow, a woman appeared. She looked 30-some, in a business skirt and blouse. No coat, heels clicking on the pavement. Her wet hair clung to her face, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She stopped beneath the same awning, breath short, hands shaking. Henry tried not to stare, but her presence was striking, clean, polished, yet clearly suffering in the cold. She rubbed her bare hands together, failing to warm them. He looked away. Just another night, just another bus to nowhere. But then the wind howled. She flinched, curled inward, and Henry glanced at her again. His jacket wasn't much, but it was something. He could keep it, stay silent, be like everyone else, but he didn't. Without a word, he shrugged off the coat. The cold bit hard. He stepped toward her and held it out. Startled, she said, "You don't have to do that." Henry gave her a tired smile. "I've already lost enough today. This coat, it's the only thing I have left to give." She hesitated. "But you need it more than I do." Still, he gently draped it over her shoulders. "Not tonight." The warmth startled her. It smelled of soap, maybe coffee, comfort. She pulled it tighter without meaning to. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, folding his arms to keep warm. They stood in silence as the snow fell around them. After a moment, she turned to him. "What's your name?" "Henry." "I'm Claire." "Nice to meet you, Claire." She glanced at him. "You shouldn't have given me your jacket." He smiled faintly. "Probably not, but I couldn't just let you freeze." The low rumble of a bus broke the silence. Headlights pierced the snow as it pulled up. Claire moved toward it, then turned back. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Henry shrugged. "Somewhere," he said, not explaining it was the backseat of a rusted truck behind a warehouse. She reached into her purse and handed him a card. "In case you ever need anything." He took it, slipping it into his folder without looking. He didn't expect to use it. People said things like that all the time. Most didn't mean it. Claire stepped onto the bus, glanced back once more, the coat wrapped around her like armor. Henry watched until the bus disappeared into the snow. Alone again, he stood shivering, not from the cold, but from something else, something small, quiet, powerful. He looked up at the sky, then down at the empty street. "Maybe tomorrow," he whispered, then turned and walked into the night. The next morning, Henry woke to the sound of birds, not many, just a few sparrows chirping near the warehouse's rusted gutter. He stretched inside the cold truck, his joints aching from the night before. The worn photo of Lily and Noah had slipped from his tin box and landed beside him. He picked it up gently, brushing off a few snowflakes that had blown in through the cracked window. His breath fogged in the cold cabin. He rubbed his hands together, staring at the photograph. Lily's smile still glowed, even through time and smudges. Noah's grin, all gap-toothed charm, stared up at him like a memory that wouldn't fade. He tucked the photo back into the box, secured the latch, and opened his manila folder. His resumes, slightly crumpled, still sat neatly inside. Yesterday's silence from hiring managers still rang in his ears. But he'd try again. That's what he did. Down the block, a soup kitchen was opening. Henry walked there slowly, hands buried deep in his pockets. He greeted the volunteers with a soft, "morning," nodding to a woman handing out breakfast sandwiches and a man pouring coffee into foam cups. He took one of each and found a corner table. Alone, he ate slowly, savoring the warmth. As he sipped his coffee, he noticed a child staring at him from another table, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, clutching a backpack too big for her frame. She smiled when he looked over. Henry smiled back, his heart tugging slightly. He remembered that smile. Noah used to smile like that. He finished his sandwich, tossed the wrapper, and headed out into the morning cold. As he passed the girl's table, he leaned down. "Stay warm, kid," he whispered with a wink. She nodded, eyes wide, and that was enough. Blank. Underscore, blank. Across town, Claire sat in a glass-walled office high above the city. The skyline gleamed beyond her, but her thoughts were miles away. In her hand, she held the crayon drawing again. She hadn't let it go since last night. A knock at the door snapped her back to the present. "Come in," she called softly. Rachel stepped inside, holding a small folder. "We got something," she said, setting it down. It took some digging. Claire opened it. There was the blurry security cam shot from the pharmacy across the street. Henry's silhouette in the snow. Next, a bus log and a few notes from the Infinity Group's in-house operations team. Then, a name. Henry Miles, former structural engineer, widower, one dependent, now in foster care. No address, no steady employment, no criminal record. Claire's breath caught. Beneath all that data was a truth the world had forgotten. Henry wasn't invisible. He was just unseen. Claire stared at his faded ID photo. Something about his eyes pulling her in. The same tired eyes that looked at her under that bus stop awning. The same hands that had shaken with cold but still wrapped a stranger in warmth. "I need to find him," she said. Rachel hesitated. "You sure? We could reach out through a local contact. Keep it low-key." "No," Claire said firmly. "This isn't business. This is human. Blank. Underscore, blank." It took 2 days, a handful of quiet inquiries, and one very observant maintenance worker from the Bronx before they found Henry again. He was sitting on a curb near the loading docks of a construction site, drinking coffee from a thermos and sketching something in a small notepad. When Claire's driver pulled up nearby, she stepped out carefully. Henry didn't notice her until she was almost beside him. He blinked, stood abruptly. "You again," he said, more surprised than anything else. Claire smiled softly. "Yeah, me again." Henry looked her over. Today, she wore jeans and a navy coat, her hair tucked into a wool hat. She didn't look like the CEO of anything, just a woman who remembered. "What are you doing here?" he asked. She looked around, then met his eyes. "Looking for you." Henry frowned. "Why?" She reached into her bag and pulled out the crayon drawing. "I found this," she said, holding it out, "in your jacket, and I couldn't stop thinking about it." Henry stared at the drawing for a long time before he took it. His hands trembled. "That's Nose," he said quietly. Claire nodded. "I figured. He's your son?" "Yes," Henry whispered. "He's in foster care right now. I'm trying to get him back." Claire didn't say anything at first. Then, "Can we sit?" They walked to a nearby bench. Claire waited until he settled beside her. "I want to help you," she said simply. Henry chuckled bitterly. "You already did." The jacket helped. "No," she said, shaking her head. "That wasn't help. That was kindness. Now I want to offer opportunity." He turned to look at her. His expression was wary. "I don't want charity," he said. "This isn't charity," Claire replied. "It's a chance." Henry didn't answer. He just looked at her. And for the first time, Claire saw something flicker in his expression. Hope. Blank. Underscore, blank. That afternoon, Claire brought him to Infinity Group. He hesitated at the glass doors. His hands dirty, his coat too thin. "I don't belong here," he whispered. Claire put a hand on his shoulder. "Neither did I once." And with that, she led him inside. They didn't go to the top floor. They didn't start with board meetings. Instead, Claire introduced him to a small team: developers, HR reps, a few junior staffers. She said the same thing to each one. "This is Henry. He's not here for numbers. He's here for heart." Henry said little at first, but when someone asked him about his background, he started to talk about losing Lily, about raising Noah in a truck, about the night he gave away the last thing that kept him warm. People listened, really listened, and Henry, who had built homes for strangers but had nowhere to lay his head, began to build something else that day. Not with bricks, but with presence, with story, with kindness. Claire stood by, quiet, her arms folded. She didn't interrupt, because she knew this was only the beginning. 1 week later, just before sunset, Henry was sitting in the modest employee lounge of Infinity Group's community outreach wing. His sleeves were rolled up, and his rough fingers were stained with graphite. He'd spent the last hour sketching building layouts for a youth shelter project Claire had quietly funded. She had a way of giving people purpose without making it feel like a handout. That was when she appeared again. Claire Donovan, CEO, the woman with the silent storm in her eyes and a grace that never asked to be noticed. "Got a minute?" she asked. Standing in the doorway, Henry looked up, surprised. "Of course." She entered, holding 2 paper cups of coffee, handed one to him. "Hot chocolate," she said. "I figured you'd like something sweet." He chuckled, warmed by more than just the drink. Then she sat, and for a moment, said nothing. "Until, I need to ask you something weird." He raised a brow. "Weirder than how we met?" She smiled, sheepish, possibly. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. Embossed, elegant, formal. Henry took it slowly, opened it, and blinked. A wedding invitation to Elijah and Samantha's wedding gala, held at the Donovan estate, her family's property. "Are you getting married?" he asked cautiously, his stomach sinking. She laughed. "God, no, that's my ex." Henry paused. "Wait, your ex is getting married, and you're invited?" She nodded. "We were engaged years ago. His fiancée now, Samantha, is the daughter of a partner firm. It's a very political wedding." He narrowed his eyes. "And you're going?" "Yes," she said, "and I'm allowed a +1." Henry tilted his head. "Okay, still not sure where I come in." Claire took a slow breath, then looked directly at him. "I want you to come with me." Silence. The hum of the lounge fridge became the only sound in the room. Henry stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or walk out. "Why me?" "Because," she said softly, "you don't owe anyone anything. You won't try to impress or pretend. You'll just be there, authentic. And right now, I need something real." Henry blinked. "You want me to pretend to be your date?" he clarified. Claire didn't flinch. "Yes, and we pretend to be, what? A couple?" She hesitated, then nodded. Henry stood and paced a bit. He wasn't angry, just stunned. Then he stopped. "Why?" Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Because they all think I've failed. That I'm alone. That no one would ever stay." Henry softened. "And you think if I show up, they'll think otherwise?" "No," she said. "I just want to remember what it feels like to not walk into a room already losing." Henry didn't answer right away. Then he looked down at his work boots, his ragged coat, his calloused hands. "I don't fit that world." "Claire." She rose from her chair, walked over, and gently placed a hand over his. "No one really fits it," she said, "but you don't need to fit in. You just need to stand beside me." He looked at her, at the woman who had offered him not just warmth, but dignity. "When is it?" "Saturday." He exhaled. "Then I guess I have 3 days to find a clean suit. Blank. Underscore, blank. Saturday evening. The Donovan estate glowed like something out of a dream. Lanterns floating above manicured hedges. Classical strings echoing under the winter stars. Henry stood at the edge of the driveway, stiff in a tailored charcoal suit Claire's assistant had arranged. His hair was trimmed, his shoes polished, but the uncertainty in his eyes hadn't left. Then Claire emerged. She wore midnight blue, simple, elegant, a single silver bracelet on her wrist. And for the first time, Henry saw her not as a CEO or a stranger, but as someone achingly human. "You clean up good," he said, stunned. "You look scared," she replied, smirking. "I am," he admitted. She took his arm. "Let's go be a story no one expects. Blank. Underscore, blank." Inside, the ballroom buzzed with whispers the moment they entered. Everyone noticed them. Claire, radiant, no longer alone, and Henry, tall, composed, but unfamiliar to everyone there. Whispers followed them like shadows. Claire greeted people with polite grace. Henry stayed by her side, silent but steady, until a champagne flute tipped near the buffet. Claire turned too fast. Glass shattered. She gasped. Henry stepped in, placing his coat over the shards instinctively. And someone laughed. From across the room, a voice too smooth. Elijah. Tall, handsome, polished, and grinning smugly. "Well, Claire," he said, walking over. "I didn't expect to see you tonight." She smiled coldly. "And yet here you are." Elijah, like always, his eyes flicked to Henry. "And this must be the new flame?" Henry held out a hand. "Elijah," he said. Elijah shook it, smirking. "And you are?" "Someone who believes people shouldn't be defined by their worst endings," Henry replied, calm and steady. Elijah blinked, then laughed, but it didn't land, because something about Henry's eyes made it clear. He was not a man who needed approval. He was a man who had endured. Claire stepped closer, and for the first time, it wasn't pretend, not entirely. The wedding gala continued like a scene out of a luxury magazine. Laughing guests, strings of golden lights, champagne towers that sparkled under crystal chandeliers. But beneath it all, tension simmered, because Claire wasn't just another guest, and Henry wasn't just another date. They danced once, slowly, awkwardly, but during that slow waltz, Claire leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for showing up." Henry smiled. "You didn't tell me your ex looked like a walking magazine ad." Claire chuckled. "He's got the cover. You've got the story." Then her smile faded. "There's something I didn't tell you." Henry looked at her, eyebrows raised. "You're not a florist, are you?" She shook her head, serious this time. "I didn't ask you here just to prove something to Elijah. I asked because I wanted you to see it. The world I used to belong to." Henry's steps slowed. "To see it," he repeated. She nodded. "So you'd understand why I walked away." "Claire," he said gently, "you don't owe me an explanation. But I owe it to myself." She cut in, voice trembling. Then she led him off the dance floor, past the chatter and silk gowns, down a quiet corridor behind the ballroom. She opened a heavy wooden door, a room no one else entered that night. Inside, a small, dimly lit study, dusty, cold. On the wall, a single framed photo. Claire at 16, standing beside a man in a military uniform. Her father. "This used to be his library," she said. "He died before I turned 18. The estate passed to my uncle." Elijah's family swooped in. "I was young, grieving, easy to manage." Elijah wasn't just my fiancé, he was part of the plan. A merger in the form of a marriage. Henry stood in silence. "I said yes, because I didn't know how to say no." She crossed the room, pulled out a drawer, and took out an old envelope. Inside, a letter, worn, unfolded many times. She handed it to Henry. It read, "Claire, if you ever forget who you are, walk away. Don't trade truth for elegance. Don't stay for the applause. You were born to build, not to belong. Love, Dad." Henry looked up. Her eyes glistened. "That night I left Elijah. I wasn't running away from him," she whispered. "I was running toward this." She turned and gestured to the room. "To the promise I made to myself. That I'd live by something more than legacy and stock prices. Henry swallowed hard. And yet, he said, you still came back, here, tonight, to remind myself. She answered, that walking away was the bravest thing I ever did. Then she stepped closer, voice low. And you, Henry, you're the first person who looked at me and didn't see the money. Or the power. Or the scandal. Just me. He hesitated, emotion tightening his chest. I saw a girl who didn't flinch in the rain. They stood there, quiet for a moment. Then she added, Elijah once said no man would ever stand beside me unless he gained something from it. Henry looked into her eyes. Well, he said, I just got hot chocolate and a weird night. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time all evening. And in that laugh, something broke open. Not the pain, the silence, the years of silence she'd buried beneath success and solitude. Back at the ballroom, the music had softened. Guests were drifting outside, some too tipsy to notice the absence of the host. But Elijah did. He was scanning the crowd when he saw them return. Claire and Henry, hand in hand. She didn't stop to greet him this time. Didn't smile. Didn't explain. She just walked past him like a gust of winter air. Unapologetic, unafraid. And in her silence, the room turned. Because sometimes, when a woman doesn't say goodbye, it's the loudest ending of all. The door of the grand ballroom swung shut behind them with a soft click. Claire didn't look back, not once. Outside, the wind had picked up. The crisp air of early autumn brushed against her bare shoulders. But she didn't shiver, not anymore. Henry offered his jacket. Silently, she took it, just as silently. They walked down the gravel path that led to the estate's gates. Neither said a word at first. It wasn't necessary. Some moments don't need conversation. They just need presence. After a while, Henry broke the quiet. So, what happens now? Claire stopped under a street lamp. The golden light cast a halo around her, softening the defiance still burning in her eyes. Now, she echoed, I live. He smiled faintly. That's a good start. She turned to face him fully. I'm not going back to that world. Henry, I don't belong there. I never did. You don't have to convince me. He said, hands in his pockets. I saw you in it. You looked like someone visiting their past. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't let the tears fall. I used to think walking away made me weak. She admitted that running from a life people would kill for meant I didn't deserve any happiness. And now? He asked. She looked him dead in the eye. Now I know, it was the only reason I ever stood a chance. They reached his car, but Claire didn't get in. Instead, she leaned against the passenger door, arms folded. I built something, you know, she said, almost as an afterthought. After I left, a little community cafe in Brooklyn, run by women who aged out of foster care. People like me, who had nowhere to go when the story ended. Henry looked at her, awe softening his expression. You never told me that. You never asked, she said, then winked. Besides, it wasn't part of the bet. They both laughed, but Henry's laughter faded into a quieter smile. You really think Elijah thought this was just about revenge? He asked. Claire shrugged. Doesn't matter what he thought. What matters is, he had to watch me leave again. This time, not in tears, not alone. Henry studied her for a long moment. I meant what I said. He told her, you don't have to do this alone. I'd stand with you, even if I gain nothing from it. Claire reached up and gently touched his cheek. That's the thing, Henry, you already have. Then she turned toward the skyline. Lights from the city glittered in the distance, like stars fallen onto concrete. I'm going back to the cafe tomorrow, she said. We're expanding. A new space, more volunteers. I'm not sure what's next, but I know where I want to begin. He didn't hesitate. I'll be there, whatever it is. You won't have to carry it alone. They didn't kiss, not that night, but when Claire looked at him again, the future wasn't empty anymore. It was open, and that was enough. Blank. Underscore, blank. Epilogue. 2 months later, the cafe had doubled in size. The Hearth, they called it, a place for stories, second chances, and cinnamon toast that tasted like childhood. On the wall behind the counter, framed simply, hung a copy of Claire's father's letter. Below it, a new edition. A Polaroid, Henry and Claire, sleeves rolled up, flour on their faces, laughing as they kneaded dough together. No filters, no legacy, no scandals, just life. Real, messy, beautiful life. Blank. Blank. And you, dear listener, have you ever walked away from something that everyone else thought was perfect? Have you ever dared to choose peace over prestige? Remember, the world might call it weakness, but sometimes, walking away is the first step toward walking into who you really are. And sometimes, the wrong invitation leads you exactly where you were meant to be. Blank. Blank. Right finger if this story touched something in you. Share it. Subscribe for more tales where truth finds its voice. And comment below. When did you walk away, and why?